RH now move to these topics, I think is really, really important. This is stuff that we've been championing for a very, very long time. Definitions of stable coins, regulations, where these frameworks are coming from, who are the players actually pushing these things forward. So I'm really excited and bullish to see him speaking on these things. He has a special insight and perspective on a lot of these things that we don't see from a lot of the standard players in the space. So I personally am extremely excited about this. And for everyone who's followed the spaces, my Twitter, a lot of things that I've been championing here recently, these things matter. I'm very excited to see this taking a more prevalent role in the discourse in our community as we can progress, be more savvy on how we can debate these things more accurate. Seeing RH
What is up,
now,
you guys? It's your boy GRC. We're coming at you live today, 6 p.m. Eastern, crypto in the evening. We have Walrus in the house. He's been posting all over YouTube on the Liquid Loans channel. But there's a couple things I wanted before we get into the Wally world, into stablecoins and LUSD. I wanted to show everybody the hex chart. Because I don't like to draw triangles or anything because I don't think they're important. But what I do like to do is look at these pumps. Now, when I got into hex for the first time, it was 2 cents all the way down here. And then 500 days later, guys, 500 days later, we returned back to that 2 cent range. And now where are we at? We're looking at 500, roughly 500% bottom to top. Hex is kind of at the top of its little peak right here. No triangles needed from the gym rat to figure that one out. No, but seriously, guys, this is a great time to be in crypto. Banks are failing. Things are going crazy. I'm not certain about everything. I've been working a lot, doing some other stuff, but I wanted to have Walrus on. I want to talk about stable coins. Me and Sam had a stablecoin discussion with Just Ask Jesse that a lot of you guys chimed in on. Very interesting topics. I was basically just listening. And there's some regulation in the crypto sphere. The regulators want crypto dead. They want it, well, I don't know about that, but they want to put their stamp on it as much as possible. We have the guy. Oh, and then we're going to talk about some pulse chain updates. And I want to see questions in the chat for Walrus and Sam as we go along, guys. I'm going to bring them right on. Let's get it going. I hope everyone is doing amazing. What an amazing time to be in the RH ecosystem. I've been, for a while there, it was getting tough. And it's not getting tough because of hex or anything in particular, but the psychology of these things can get rough. 500 days, 600 days down, everyone wants to put a knife in their best buddy. It gets intense. But right now we're all smiles, guys, because hex is panned.
Walrus, good to see you.
What's going on, gentlemen? How is everybody?
I like the stash, bro. Looking good. How you been?
Got to mix it up a little bit. Doing well, man. Been doing a bunch of traveling. A lot of cool crypto people were down here for South by Southwest, so we got to hang out with some extra people that have been down and around. So it's been nice, man, and to hang out with everybody.
Didn't you go to to New York, or was that in California?
Denver.
What was that again? Can you explain what that was? Because I heard you guys talking in the chat. You actually went there on feet.
ETH Denver?
Oh, yeah, ETH Denver. Now, was that more of an NFT thing, or was that just Ethereum in general?
No, it was ETH in general. It was all kinds of stuff. Circle, Teller, just tons of places. Just everyone was out there. It was huge.
And how was your experience down there? Was it fun? Did you meet some people? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, what I was actually really excited about was that it was actually just a good conference. Like, it was fun. So, like, sometimes we end up going to these things and it's very business or tech only almost. Man, they're just people just bouncing around having a good time. It was just a good event. Like, you didn't even have to be that into crypto and you would have went and had a good time. There was like arcade stuff. There was Andrew Jones, the painter. They had like a DJ session where it was all blacked out. They had a chill out zone where they had this relaxed music and beanbag chairs and there's food. I mean, it was just fun. Like, you could have just went and had a good time. It was a really live event. It was nice.
Hey, kudos to you for going to those. I don't spend a lot of time necessarily with other humans, so I know it's a super valuable thing, and humans are social. I spend a lot of time on the device, right, talking to people.
Right.
But like the physical gives you a different connection. So kudos to you for going through and doing that. When we last spoke, if you guys didn't catch that episode, you should check it on the channel, search for it. Search just Walrus and you'll be able to see the episode. The last time we spoke, you were starting out with the podcast, or like you were earlier than you were today with the podcast and bringing people together and the education piece. I would love to hear an update on that, because I think what you were bringing to the space on some of those things and the approach you're taking was very interesting.
Yeah, I think that they're valuable. So like the event and then having the podcast go hand in hand. It's just different when you get to know who people are, right? I mean, especially when the stuff is so difficult. Most of the stuff we're pretending we understand more than we understand when we have some of these conversations, and so much more of this is off gut feel, off the people that we like being around, than what we really want to admit. Like, I know we're all super high IQ experts that have been doing this for years, and we're battle hardened through the bear. but man, like,
not me.
But it's nice to be able to get out there and get to talk to all those people. You just even especially when people you disagree with, it is substantially different once you've had to sit down and shake someone's hand. The things you'll say to a non-PFP is infinitely different than when you're sitting down with a grown man having a coffee. Hey man, that seemed mean. Things are so much easier. It's wild.
Yeah, people say some ravishly harsh things on the internet, and but it's a good practice in meditation to like not let it bother you, and I think it makes you better in business in general to
100%.
Totally turn that off, like, because it's just like, people are crying. Like, I've never met somebody who's just crying in real life about other people, so like it's like, okay, clearly these guys are wasting all their time, right? I wanted to jump into the LUSD conversation, and I just wanted to know why is having a stable coin on Pulse Chain so important? Like, I'm trying to figure this out for myself, to be honest, like as we go along. Like, I want to know why having a stable coin is so important in general and on Pulse Chain, obviously.
Sure. So I think when we talk about stable coins and we get into liquidity pools in crypto, it's really hard. But if you don't have some stable measurement, then what we have is the most advanced way to say, I'll give you 4 chickens for a cow. And all you have is the most advanced digital barter system. And so there's a reason for measurements in the first place. So when you look at things like LUSD, I think when we look back, the very first words basically ever written in crypto were a digital peer-to-peer cash system. So that's the idea of using something that's over collateralized like LUSD. That's what this whole thing was roughly about, right? Like that was what the initiation and the original origin story kind of for Bitcoin was, peer-to-peer cash, right? So Bitcoin doesn't solve that for a lot of reasons, but it does solve a lot of problems. And so having something that's over collateralized like LUSD, it's not spending $1. It's spending ETH or spending Pulse. It's just doing it in a way that we can measure. So the same way that a lot of people romanticize, and there's a lot of positives for like a gold-backed fiat currency, right? Like we were okay with that, right? Because then it wasn't this fiat. It was a promissory note, right? This was $1 worth, this metric worth of gold. Everyone was on board with that for the most part. And those have been some of the most successful currencies in history. This is the same thing. You're not spending $1. You're spending $1 worth of that collateral. So LUSD is just a fungible, spendable way of ETH. Like it is $1 worth of the ETH energy that's behind it. And that's where I think these things are really valuable. Like sometimes the trying to figure out in a crypto sense can be difficult, but we liked gold-backed currencies. We see the idea of using collateralized instruments to make other things stable and safe. And then we want to be able to spend things. So even using the dollar as a measurement, it's not $1. It's $1 worth of the collateral behind it. And that makes these things, again, spendable, makes these things able to be used commerce. It allows you to obfuscate from price and be risk off. It allows you to have these things in liquidity pools, not push and pull the other things around and give awkward sense of pricing. So sometimes that's obviously bullish if all you want is price to go up and something else is lifting it with it. But you have all these different instruments where you want things that you can measure properly.
Question for you on that. So like, I'm not very bullish on stable coins in the medium to longer term, because I don't think that like tying oneself to a metric that's going to die is like a prudent thing to do, right? Like the metric's going to change,
right?
Like it's changed a ton of times throughout history. And then there's a common like cliche that's out there that history repeats itself, whether it's the styles in clothing or the types of music or all sorts of stuff just kind of repeats itself, or things in government or with fiat, right? That just repeat themselves. And you put it very nicely at the beginning when you said we have a barter system, because hundreds of years ago, everything was barter.
Right.
And that's how you were able to accomplish things. But one of the issues was, I'm really good at making bread, or, cattle, guy can breed cows or whatever the fuck that is, right? And I have to be able to find the individual to exchange that cow who wants a cow, and
Right.
they also happen to have what I want in exchange, right? Like I want a t-shirt, they have chickens. Okay, cool. Well, let me trade you this cow for the chickens. Let me take these chickens and go over here and trade these to this person to get some yarn so that I can have this other person make me a shirt, right?
Yeah, I think there's that economic example where they say go make a BLT, where you're like, okay, if I actually have to go make bread, grow lettuce, grow tomatoes, and raise a pig, it's like the actual cost to make this is insane. But once you add capitalism, it's like, $3 or whatever it is. So I think the BLT is one of those classic economic examples.
So when you put this together, right? So I believe a lot of things in history repeat, in the sense that you're not going to see, the same day or time like happen. It's going to have a variation of that happen, right? Like you have good days, but every good day is different, so to speak, right? So the history repeats itself. But one of the issues was that is the commerce it slowed down. So to solve that problem, we came out with something that everybody could use. So this way we can go back and forth. And if you think back to, I think it was version 1 of Uniswap, kind of like that, right? You would take whatever you had and you switch into Ethereum to be able to switch out to whatever it is you wanted. Right. And is a really advanced, like where you can get a measurement of whatever it is you're looking for in anything you're looking for in crypto in a barter system. Is that like why wouldn't we just move in that direction as a world and society? Because you can go through and very quickly get a price or a measurement stick in anything that you want, because everything is digital, everything is decentralized, is good in the space that we're talking about, is decentralized, so that you can go swap into whatever you want, where like the dollar is like, I mean, we know that's down and to the right? So like, we know that shit's going to go away. And even if you're just using it as like a measuring stick, right? So it's $1 worth of pulse or $1 worth of ETH or whatever the case is. At some point in history, like everything was denominated in pounds, or everything was denominated in XYZ world reserve currency. And we've changed, right? So I'm not super bullish on stables in there, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on, just what I was saying here.
So even when these things, like we're going to swap BTC to ETH off what ratio? Just the ratio that we have between those two particular pools. You end up trying to put all these things together, and it's, again, if we take away any dollar measurement, just imagine that we were walking around and just swapping value for value. Like, how hard would it be to like walk in and be like, hey, here's a phone, give me X amount of eggs. Like, those denominations are difficult, and we almost don't realize the amount of friction and fungibility that gets removed from those things. Like, we see this in like you can see this in like fantasy football. Like, people want to hold a pick rather than a player. A player is hard to denominate. Picks are more fungible. So like you see this in all these even small games where fungibility between handing these commodities around ends up making these things much more efficient systems overall. And there's the thing about having something like an LUSD or USDL, along with really strong liquidity providing options where you're capital efficient on that side as well, gives you both options. So, for example, if you want to hold ETH and basically spend ETH, you can also be the one that holds the vault behind the LUSD, and then you also have that exposure away, or you can obfuscate away from essentially the inflation, right? So if I'm holding $500 worth of ETH, and that's where I'm getting my value from, and spending LUSD on the other side, if I'm the one who's actually holding the ETH behind it, then I'm not exposed to see that devaluation of the dollar. And we're just using it as a measurement. So you can be more sophisticated as you want. And if you want to be, basically, again, you can use something like LUSD to have spendable, fungible, denominated units. but you don't have to hold those for a long time if you don't want that exposure to like the dollar going down as well. And you can hold the collateral behind it. So you have multiple different plays depending on scale of economy, what it is you're trying to achieve. But that dollar is just making that fungibility between all these pools simpler because it's just a representation of a, again, a measurement of ETH. So they function nearly the same, other than you have fungibility to move these things around and, again, a clean unit.
Do you think that, like, so at some point in the future, we don't know when, instead of denominating everything in dollars, so we might look at the ratio, say, for wrapped BTC to ETH, and we don't really pay attention to the actual ratio. What we see is the dollar signs, right? But there could be a world in the future where that habit changes, right? Like
Sure.
we didn't have the habit of, like, the second you wake up to have this, right? I'm looking at this, right? Like I'm spend a tremendous amount of time on my device. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'll like have it with me like 99.9% of the time. And it's a habit that I created because it was valuable to go through and have this. Like, I can do business, I can talk to people, right? I can do all sorts of amazing things through this device. And that might be, I don't know. I'm just trying to have a conversation here around this. It might be where the habit of denominating things in USD actually goes away in the future. And then how does that, right? Like, I could see a world where that would play out, where we're understanding the actual ratio between them, which we don't even pay attention to roughly, unless you provide LP.
Right.
Don't pay much attention to it in general. We just look at US dollars, but in the future, that habit might change. And instead of thinking about USD, we actually think about the ratios we're switching between things in. What are your thoughts on like that? Or like, because my thought process is, and I like liquid loans, is that like, okay, cool, this is inevitably going to take place at some point. I think sooner, but maybe it's 40 years. I don't know when this will happen, right? But I think it will be sooner rather than later. And when this inevitably happens, and maybe it's not in ratio terms, maybe it is in a Russia, Middle East, China, world reserve currency, right? Maybe that's how we're looking at things in the future. And now everything's denominated in this new money currency, and it's not in USD anymore. It's like the USDL is, in my mind, I'm thinking of it as like the lira, right? Or like the currency that goes away when you create new currency. And inevitably, like, it's hard to think about that because it's been such a staple in people's lives with USD, right? People don't think this is happening, but literally, you don't have to be super intelligent to like look at history and watch this thing's just going down in value. The amount that we're printing, it's going to end in our lifetimes. I believe that to be true. And I think it's probably going to happen in the next 5 to 15 years or something, where we're going to have this change over in some degree. It just seems like inevitable. So what do you think about that? Because then it's going to be like USDL is going to be USD, but we're in this new environment where everything's called ABC now.
Sure. So one, just the amount of market there is, even if LUSD, USDL was able to provide, say, I don't know, some sizable majority of what you're getting out of USDC, USDT, all these fiat backed. If it did that for 5 years, that's a pretty damn valuable tool. I'd actually be pretty ecstatic about that. So that idea of swapping the measuring stick or the denomination at some point in the future is an interesting one. And I think the way you would see something like the liquid loans progress is that you would see similar like Uniswap, where you'd have multiple modes where you have V1, V2, V3, and then you could basically see another replication, basically similar code pegged to whatever the new instrument is. And then you could basically have a process where you'd still have, because those things, it wouldn't be like one day, no more dollars, now it's the new thing. So you could basically do a V2 version, and then you would basically have that same progression. The same way you'd phase out your normal currency, you'd phase out the same thing with the stable coins and unroll positions. So there is some level of future proofing around those things. And then you can also, again, you can use liquidity pools to tie the USDL to whatever the new thing is. And again, these things in crypto, we're still clicking so many buttons along the way. There'll be less and less button clicking and much more things that get done through portfolio tools and front ends, where these things are much less seamless. So even though I agree we'll probably see some of these metrics change in the future, we still need good solutions for right now. And again, even if we're on a 5 to 10 year time frame, the way you would unwind some of those positions and be able to have multiple renditions of it in the future, the liquidity code works great actually for that changing future.
Yeah, it's a awesome. I think of it as like a framework because it's being deployed, right? It's
Yep.
like over in Ethereum now, liquid loans, and then Power City's basically just copying it over there too, right?
Yep.
Because
On
the
PulseX.
framework works. You're like step 1, 2, 3, right? These steps are an awesome framework, and like you just mentioned, you come out with 2.0 or things like that. One thing that I was asking Jesse about the other day, which I think we cut off because I had to run, was why not take the same exact framework and apply it to, because I think they're applying to Pulse X. You guys are doing Pulse. Why not do it to Hex?
All the reasons that you probably think innately that you want to use Hex or why you don't want to use Hex. Because Hex is awesome, because you can use T-shares and because the price can go up, right? Like that's all the positive things. But that actually makes it bad collateral because it has, one of the things about wanting these things to be at scale is you need liquidity and more participants. It makes these things easier, right? That's part of the advantages to USDC, USDT is it's attached to a giant money printer, so it's easy to get liquidity, right? So when you have something that's over collateralized, you're less capital efficient, right? Like that's why if you listen to even any of the really, really high end economists, they talk about some level of fractional reserving, just not what we're doing now, right? Where it's essentially almost algorithmic. There's some level where you can actually maintain it with enough liquidity, but you're also capital efficient. So Hex, because of low liquidity and having multiple use cases, again, whether it's to stake or just use as a speculative instrument, it actually makes it bad collateral because you probably want to stake it, right? So to actually incentivize people to use it as collateral, it has to overcome the uses of everything else. So Hex has a pretty good use case. People are a pretty big fan of staking. So whatever it is that you're going to make it as another tool, people have to want to do that more than stake it. Then you also have the collateral issue, and you want it to have not just a lot of collateral, liquidity, but you want to have it tied to a lot of different pairs so that pricing is very, very stable. We tend to think that there's just a price, like there's a price of eggs. Well, it's not a price of eggs. The same eggs can get sold in a million places for a different price, but we just have an aggregation. We use something close, and we do the same thing with crypto. So having multiple pools where you can smooth out some of that price aggregation is a big component as well, and making sure that you don't have flash loans and different metrics where people can push the price up insanely high, collateralize it at a high level, then let it crash back down and extract value. So there's all the pros about all the cool stuff about Hex actually make it a bad collateral because it's really, really good at being Hex.
So I'm going to paraphrase here, and then I want to ask you about this because I don't necessarily agree on it, but that's why I'm asking these questions. So, right,
sure.
You said something very similar to Jesse around having pairs out there for liquidity, so you get different prices, right? Because you do have different pairs and different prices. You can go to Dex Screener and you'll see this yourself. Don't believe what we're saying, right? And the liquidity.
And I'll just show that real quick because 2 days ago a DAI pair came up. So there's only 2 transactions on here, $614,000 liquidity. As you can see, I just pulled up the Hex chart USDC and it was at 9 cents. This is sitting at 86 cents. So that's just a quick tidbit. I'd really just noticed this from Silver's tweet that this was created 2 days ago and another $614,000 liquidity set up right to that 8-9 range, just for an example.
Perfect example, right?
Yep.
So there's different prices in different spots, right?
Yep.
And so if I'm understanding the argument for not using Hex, I think the best thing was like, okay, it's got a use case and it has to overcome this use case. I don't think the Hex is good for staking on Ethereum for the vast majority of people who are staking, given that their stakes are going to come out in the middle of a bull run and they don't have the money to actually, right? You're going to have $700 Ethereum gas fees, right? And then you're going to have to end stake 3 years worth of daily compounding that you're going to take up a tremendous amount of data, and it's going to be $1,700 or $3,700 to end a stake that's only 4 years old. And I just don't think it's a great idea to stake Hex on Ethereum, that is, unless you do a larger amount or for a longer period of time, or you're doing some type of hedge against that piece of it. So if you listen to even what RH says, right, Richard Hart would talk about most of the performance in
His own
hex.
price.
Correct.
Yep.
So there's plenty of people who don't stake in hex, and they would still like to use that as collateral, right? So I think that there's multiple use cases for a hammer. A hammer, you don't just hammer nails, right? I use a hammer for a million different things. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't come out with another use case for a hammer, right? And the idea behind the number of pairs or liquidity. If you look at just 1 year ago, the number of pairs of hex to have exit liquidity, right? Because in my mind, it's a vision of you can go hex to USDC, right? And you can go out that way, right? But you could also go hex to anything else and find a roundabout road, right? If the road in front of you is closed, I can go down this way and drive around the block and then turn around this way and then still go the same direction I wanted to go. And it's the same thing that happens in crypto, right? If there's a detour here in front of you, you can take a different route to get out. And if we look at the number of pairs a year ago, and now we look at the number of pairs today, and just GRC just brought up that like there's another, 600 grand worth of liquidity. Not that 600 grand is a tremendous amount of money, but there's increasing liquidity and increasing pairs practically on the daily, but probably more so likely on the monthly of like how much is in the system, right? So it doesn't, right? Having liquidity, it doesn't seem like a.
So
Right?
Have you ever heard that joke where I used this as an example a long time ago where there's a guy who's speeding, gets pulled over, and then he tells the cop he's got like guns and drugs in the car. Do you know this one?
I think I've heard.
Remember it?
I don't know.
So this guy, I'll keep the joke quick, but it makes sense for the arguments when it comes to crypto as a whole. So this guy's driving, he's speeding on the way to work. He gets pulled over. Cop comes out. It's like, hey, bud, what do you got going on? He's like, oh, I'm great. He's like, all right. So he's about to run his license. Says, do you have any guns or drugs in the car? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay, what do you have in the car? He's like, oh, got a couple of rifles in the trunk, pistol underneath the seat. I got what is it? Like, a kilo of coke in the glove box. Cop freaks out, gun out, get out of the car, man. He's like, all right. So he gets out. And anyway, they're going through the whole thing, and the cop's freaking out, and calls sergeant, gets back up, sits the guy down. Finally, 2 or 3 other cars show up, and they're like, all right, we're gonna go search the car. Guy tells me he's got all this stuff in the car. Well, they go in the car, open up glove box, nothing's in there. Look underneath the seat, nothing's in there. And they pop the trunk. Guy goes and talks. He's like, Sarge, I don't know what to tell you, man. I pulled the guy over. The guy tells me he's got guns and drugs in the car. I don't know, man. That's what he told me. So the sergeant walks over to the guy and he picks him up. And he's like, bud, what's going on, man? Like, my deputy's telling me you're telling me you got guns and drugs, all this stuff in the car. And he goes, I bet you that son of a bitch told you I was speeding too, huh? So the whole guy's just trying to get out of a speeding ticket. The point is, he's willing to lie about guns, drugs, and everything else to get out of a speeding ticket. And that's what you have in crypto, where you can't think about these things being broken by rational actors. They get broken by irrational actors. So even a lot of liquidity isn't enough to stop $100 million flash loan, which breaks these things, right? So that's the thing about having some liquidity, is it can't be a threshold where it makes sense, where most users will have a good experience, where 95% of the time it'll work. Like, this is crypto, where someone is going to come break your stuff if you give them an opportunity. So when you look at the liquidity, it's not, hey, is there enough liquidity here to be able to collateralize? Is there enough liquidity to be able to sell and move these things around? Is there enough liquidity that somebody can't flash loan, spike the price, manipulate these things in some area, and extract extra value from the system? So you can't build things to work. You have to build them to not break.
So can you talk about, there's probably a lot of people who are listening who don't know how a flash loan would work in this case. And then I want to talk more about the liquidity piece of it first.
Sure. So a flash loans, it gets into a lot of complexity, but a flash is doing multiple transactions from a wallet in the same block. So on the normal side, you can't do this, but you can actually use flash scripts and do multiple transactions in one block from one single wallet. And this is like when you see like sandwich attacks or front runs or all these scripts for like MEV. Those are similar mechanics to what you'd see with a flash loan. But a flash loan, again, they'll use a variety of different things like Aave, and it's where they're able to take some value, be able to use a flash mechanic through, again, any of these leverage platforms, have a ton of value, and then again, you could spike a price to show it really high. So the very, very simple overview is, I take $1 million, I go to Aave, GMX, at some of these different platforms, I leverage it up extremely high, where I basically have, for a single block, $20 million worth of buy power. I'd go to that hex pool where you see hex liquidity at 600K. inject 20 million, spike it to the absolute roof, and then you come back and then again, then you could extract whatever it is from the price difference. So there's a lot of different ways you can go through and do these things. Again, there's a variety of different moves, but essentially it's just taking, again, either an uncollateralized or a collateralized leverage, and then moving these things around and trying to, again, manipulate pricing or DAO voting. There's a variety of different reasons people use them.
Is this similar to like, when you do a transaction on something and then another transaction, I know it's different, but another transaction comes in right in front of you doing the exact same amount as you, but it has a different gas thing? Like,
they paid more gas to get in front.
Yeah, then they get in front of you. I've done a few transactions where I look on Dex Screener, the next transaction is done the exact same amount as me in the exact same second. Mine gets unapproved, still shows up on the chain, which pisses me off. And then theirs goes through and I sit there and the price is lower and I'm like, okay.
So this stuff all comes down to MEV. No. MEV is one that's, again, interesting. So what you have is, we think that transactions like come from a wallet into a block, but they actually go into a mempool. And from that mempool, whoever it is, whatever validator is actually constructing that block can actually go through those transactions and select them and add. And that's where you get MEV. So that minor extracted value or maximal, I mean, again, it's the same construction, just it's a little different now, different terminology after the change in consensus. So again, though, like sandwich, front running, back running, again, there's all these little things where they'll go through and say, order your buys in a way where they get to buy in front and be the seller to different orders. Again, there's a variety of different ways you can pull out value, but again, flash loans is another mechanic to do all those things. They all work similar, at least to an average user.
Thank you for getting into that, and I'm sure that was helpful.
That was a selfish question, by the way. I was dealing with that with something else, and I wanted to know if it had any. It's kind of just I wanted to know your take on that.
So that would be fun. Like I would like to learn more about that stuff because I think it'd be fun to do. But because manipulation in the crypto market is perfectly legal, where it's not legal in other markets, right? So this is why Walrus is talking about these people purposely break them in the legacy too, but it's way easier to manipulate things in crypto, and it's not illegal to manipulate things in crypto for a profit. So
it's the double-edged sword of finality, right? Like there's a variety of people like dealing with some of these, but this is something RH has talked on before. So moving $1 million with all the socioeconomic forces in the world, having that be final, uncensorable is really powerful. Having 60-70 cent transactions where you're trying to buy a coconut water, having that be final and unreversible, that's actually rather difficult. So it depends on the scale of these things. So there's actually a place where finality is difficult, and this is an example of that, where if you're using a permission system, or say again, let's pretend I'm Wells Fargo and I'm sitting here and you come in to basically try to perform like a flash loan mechanic, they can just basically cancel it afterwards and be like, no, this was manipulation. This was a price freak out. And again, in some of these places, you'd actually want them to be able to do that. But again, with crypto, we're trying to solve some of these extra problems, and finality is actually not the saving grace that it is for censorship resistance. It can actually be difficult in making some of these more, Turing complete, more advanced products actually successful.
So to touch back on the liquidity piece, right? So when you're like, why not use Hex as the collateral, right? There's a lot of people in this community who think that Hex is something that is like revolutionary, right? They think that this is going to be the number one crypto in terms of market cap. They believe these things, right? So and it's not just like one person, right? Like there's several people, there's a bunch of people who believe these things, right? So if you like subscribe to that belief system and understand that when you have something like that say if it were to be in the top 3 cryptos, right? The liquidity drastically goes up throughout that whole life of it. And whether that's new people coming to the party, as in bringing new capital as liquidity, or simply the liquidity increases because the prices are increasing, right? That's increasing the amount of liquidity because prices are increasing. If you think of like what a flash loan does, right? It's going to manipulate the price positively or negatively. Like you could say negative's down, right? But positive could be negative depending on the situation.
Sure.
So if a flash loan is going to manipulate the price up or down, right, in some way, then why is that a bad thing? Unless somebody is, takes out more than 10% as collateral, right?
That's the issue. So if the price is, let's say, actually 8.6 cents, well, if I can get it to, if I can go in there and push that die pull up, I mean, again, there's 600K in there. So, I mean, like 5-10 mil would push that thing uh 15x or something like that. So then I would actually, if I was able to push that up, then the way I would start to originate that collateralization is at a price of, what is that, like $12 or something? Or excuse me, $1.20. And then you collateralize at 110%. Then the price crashes back down, you get liquidated, but you pulled out all that extra value. That's the issue.
Yeah. So wouldn't you see that an issue with the design of the framework, not with the flash loan? Right? Because the design of the framework, if you're pulling from a pool of 600K when there's multiple pools of millions of it, right? Because it's not necessarily
Right.
you're going to pull from multiple different ones and take an average, or
Right.
You're not gonna just pull from one pool, right? So I still don't like. I think that I like the framework. I think that it's an intelligent design. Hasn't been broken yet, right? So I like that piece of it. But then there's so many people that are super maxy about Hex, and I'm like, great. Why doesn't somebody just fork this for Hex? Because it'll be successful. First of all, you don't really want to stake on Ethereum anyway, right? Unless you are staking a large amount because of end fees, right? When you end your stake and Ethereum together, it's very expensive, especially if you're doing it in a bull run. So the average person who's putting in $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 or whatever probably shouldn't stake, right? They should probably just sit on their shit. But another way to extract value could be utilizing this, right? And if there's a manipulation of one pool that breaks the system, then the system would have already been broken, right? Like it's not just going to be the die pool, right? For this example,
I know what you're saying.
So these things are already inherently risky. So again, like it's about like chances of, right? So like, are you more like, if you were using Hex's collateral, is it more likely to be more volatile than ETH or the native coin? Yes. Okay. And is it more likely to have some levels of manipulation at some point that maybe you don't put into the model, you don't get the way you want? Yep. And is there more of a use case for Hex at scale with staking than there is with, say, Pulse at scale? Yes. So it's just, you're stacking up errors where you're already doing something inherently risky, like hyper speculative instruments and collateralization. So like, that's why to me it's one pool, it's the native token. It's because we're already doing something that has a pretty, again, on the scale of everything, a pretty high risk profile. I don't want any extra risk. Like, it to me. So again, you could, like, again, it would function well, but I don't want any extra risk. Like, I'm the first one.
But the argument, and we're just having a conversation because I just see it. So, but the argument doesn't hold up, right? So the logic is, okay, the greater liquidity because
Right.
Pulse, but Pulse actually is smaller, right? If you figure 1.9 whatever billion is going to go in there, how much is Hex, right? In terms of the market cap of it, right?
It's not market cap, it's liquidity.
Well, market cap of 1.9 billion, right, is how much went into sacrifices, right?
Yeah,
well, we don't know how that'll be into the pools.
Yeah, I don't know if that directly is going to be in the pools, like at any given time. I feel like they're just going to market make it effectively over time.
Correct. And then which is going to have more holders, Hex or Pulse?
So again, even the holders, it's just about the thickness on that liquidity.
Yeah, I like this conversation. I don't know if I necessarily agree on the liquidity.
So Sam, you're basically saying it's easily manipulatable, like from a standpoint, like if everyone knew about this, like it should operate a little differently, or what? Or
I think the liquid loans protocol, like that framework, can be used for Hex very successfully. I think it would work very successfully. I might be in the minority in that. Like, clearly, Walrus doesn't think it would be, but that doesn't mean I'm right or he's wrong. It's just,
of course,
having a conversation around this.
Well, yeah, having these conversations is important too, because it opens up people's minds to actually what's going on rather than just like the cheer. I mean, whether that is
100%.
But like, I love working through these more complicated concepts because it just makes you more aware of the simpler stuff, for me at least, as we move through. I wanted to back up off of that for 1 second because it's kind of on topic, but this is something that I have issues with I have issues with because I understand the price movement of Hex. I understand the liquidity. I watch it. I watch it all the time when I'm at my house. I see that they move it. I see that it gets weak in one spot, then it travels up really quick, and then they hold it at a different spot. But I have never been able to understand what happens to liquidity when it goes on to a centralized exchange. And for the first time, I'm pretty sure I've never been able to purchase Hex on a centralized exchange. A centralized exchange that I actually use, one that is actually popular, one that is no KYC, one Sam that we're doing an interview with. They actually reached out to me in my DMs like a month or so ago and talking about like affiliate stuff and marketing, and I just said no. But they said I would like to do a stream, so I reached out to them. MEXC Global will list Hex crypto in the assessment zone and open trading for the Hex USDT. Remember this USDT pair right now on DEX Screener. There's $32,000 of liquidity on the USDT Hex pair. And so what does that make you feel? Like, what do you, because we all have been watching Hex. It's one of the only things not traded on centralized exchanges. And then a centralized exchange picks it up. How do you feel about that? And can you talk about that a little bit?
So I just like options, right? I think it instantly, like when we go over these listing, it turns into like central exchange versus DEX. It's like no one took your options away. You can still use all the DEXs, so you don't have to use any of those things. So I'm always big on that. We want to allow as many people as possible to transact at the level they want to transact when it comes to crypto. So if you just want to hold some Bitcoin on Cash App and it gives you some upside, some level of investing, some idea of like monitoring and keeping track of these things, I think that's a positive. Like if you just told me there's some numbskull 18-year-old who at least knows what Bitcoin is now, pays attention, gets a feel, has some exposure to the ecosystem, that's cool. Do I think that we should all take all our money, cash it out, put it in Bitcoin on Cash App? Well, okay, no. So I think you just want to give people options, and seeing, for better or worse, people still see those things as validation to see centralized entities list things. So I think it's overall a net positive. Even if no one used it, we'd still be better off.
And do you think that, because my whole problem, the thing with Hex is that most of the supply doesn't move. Most of the supply. So really the pool that you're within when you're talking about buying and selling Hex is rather small. Like you can look at the market cap and do the numbers, and they make no difference to what's actually going on in the pool. So I always worry in my head, like this extra Hex is going to come out of nowhere and like they're going to buy it all up. And then there's going to be way more liquidity and way more like, but I guess at the end of the day, if what the OA address is doing and the daughter addresses is just staying still for the most part, there's really nothing to worry about other than more Hex being bought, whether it's just from the exchange itself with USDT or from the people that are buying from it.
There's just always some level of like there's one of these things, like we don't have these perfect systems anywhere yet. So whenever people get upset about the supply side of those things, it's at what cost and compared to what. So you look at the performance of how it's handled things so far, limited governance model on most things, and you basically just pick the risk profile you prefer, right? Like there's all these things have some pros and downs, right? Like if you pick any side, I can take a decent side of the argument. I can at least hold it up for at least a couple of minutes, right? Like there's just so much of this stuff that's difficult.
Yeah, I think that's like you were saying, if from a marketing standpoint, from an adoption standpoint, like the more eyeballs that see your shit is valuable, right? Even if it's Walrus is saying Sam's a douchebag, he's a scum bucket, like XYZ, and he'll add people to my network in a positive way because they're like, this guy's a bozo who's talking about him. I wonder what this person's actually about. And so like getting it on MEXC, that's cool. Like that's just going to be more eyeballs on Hex. And most of them are probably never heard of it before and don't know what it is. And, you know, they're like, I only trade brand new tokens that come onto MEXC. And then they see this thing and then they're like, you know, they go on Twitter and check it out and they're like, holy shit, there's this community over there. And, you know, a lot of people are actually in the community talking about it, right? And if you go to other communities and you look at hashtags or like $, whatever it is that they're trading, like there's a lot of spam, right? But there's a lot of spam in Hex too, but like you see conversations a lot of the times, right? It's not just like clicking this link or like spam stuff. There's a lot of conversations of a lot of intelligent, thoughtful people out there. So that's exciting. You know, it's exciting that it's coming out there.
And I think there's an advantage on some of these things, and I always make the joke like a 0 and a 1. So we went from essentially, well, now there was no exchanges to just one exchange. Like that's a different conversation now, right? So I think some of these things, it's the idea of like just breaking new ground and turning a never into a sometimes or a none into a some makes a big difference. So even again, it's a small exchange. Again, I prefer that people use this the least amount. Don't hold your funds there. All the obvious central exchange stuff, all that still goes on, even though this one's listing something that we all like. Nothing about the risk profile changes on there. But again, there's still, again, for better or worse, people who find value in that side of it. And again, it's nice for these discussions where you can still, again, to use the same example, if they were on Cash App using Bitcoin, I would like to be able to at least get them onto an exchange and holding other stuff. And then if I can get them from there, I'm going to get them onto a wallet, right? So not everyone can jump into these things, with both feet. So I'll take options along the way to keep moving people down that scale into better decisions.
I'm actually, I do business with somebody who has money on a centralized exchange, whether it's Coinbase or Cash App or Robinhood, right? Those are 3 different places that they have accounts where they have crypto, and we do business together. And they get restricted on these accounts. So I finally got them to order a treasure. And so it just reminded me of this because you're like, it's a path, right? Like you got to get into crypto, and then from getting into crypto to like understanding a little bit what's going on and getting them to a safe spot, right? Because then when you try to send your transaction and it's like, you've reached your limit, you cannot send more than 3,000 BTC a week or whatever the case is. Like you don't have to deal with that because you have control.
I always like to bring up my earlier story because I think that this was something for me that I remember. It was actually a long vacation from Power City now. One of my favorite things, because that guy's brilliant, I really, really like him and I always have, it's when he told me he got scammed. Like you think that I'd be like, oh, sorry, LV. I was like, yes. And it's not because I wanted LV to lose money. Yeah, there you know. It wasn't because I wanted LV to lose money. It's because I wanted to be like, okay, there's this guy I talk to now who's very sophisticated. He's intelligent. Who's done all these cool things. Who's, has run his business. He's coming up on retiring. He's done all this cool stuff, right? But he got rinsed once. So it brings me back to people don't come in like we see LV now. For people that are just coming in, seeing us talk now, like this isn't how we got here. So I always tell my beginning one where I had Bitcoin caught a pump, and I'll never forget. I literally pulled out my phone and went, oh, I've got more Bitcoin because it was worth more dollars. But I say with that idea, no investor mind state, none of the connotation understanding what I have now is just like, oh, cool, it went up. Closed the phone, walked off, never thought about it with that same context. It took years and years of being in the space and doing other things before the guy who's now, sitting here talking with Sam, talking about variations of liquidity across pools. Like that ain't how I got here, right? You don't have to be you don't have to be the guys you're hearing now to be here and be successful.
Yeah, now me and Sam are addicted to success, really, in every. I'm addicted to doing everything in my life to max effort, max understanding, max efficiency, and this is just a theme for certain guys, right? Like, there's a group of guys that love digging into bodybuilding until they're weighing all their food, right? They're weighing every single fiber of their body, and so I'm kind of like. If anyone knows Derek, More Plates, More Dates, Sam Stoll, a lot of these guys I watch, they're all about the detail, right? I love detail. And those are the guys that I'm really looking to talk to because my brain doesn't stimulate otherwise. But the truth is, in 2019 or whenever I got into crypto for the first time, $3,400 Bitcoin, I had not one clue about one detail of anything that was going on, and 95% of the stuff I learned really profited me none. It was really just my overall desire to learn everything for a long-standing goal that I would probably have in the future, right? So remember, guys, if you're like, oh my God, I have 3 kids running around, I have a full-time job. If I have to get to the level of understanding of all this stuff, I don't know if I can do it. You don't need to do it. You don't need to do most of it. What you mostly need to do is learn about security is important. And that takes a couple weeks if you really want to understand the nuance there. Learning about self-custody, immutability, staying on chain, and then you're really done, right? You're kind of done. Like you just need to know, like, okay, this is on a centralized exchange. This is on a this is on MetaMask or whatever. I can't think of the verbiage right now. So don't be confused. This show is generally for people that just love, are kind of addicted to diving into the detail, because, you know, later down the road, we all have, you know, big hopes and dreams for doing everything in our life is like that. So don't be nervous if you're thinking like that, or because that is just the way me and Sam operate with everything we do. Like, I follow Sam's lead. I've been talking to Sam for 6 years straight. We talk about every single subject that we speak on in these terms, but they're not necessarily important for everyone. Everyone's life situation is 100% different. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Can I go selfish and ask some questions here to Walrus, because I want to, like, potentially
8 minutes
for my business. Okay.
Rapid fire.
With the learning knowledge, the knowledge piece related to liquid loans and what you're putting out there, right? How do you structure that? So I have a lot of content on the internet in form, like me talking to a camera, whether it's here or on my other YouTube channel or one of the podcasts or something that I do. And I would like to take that and put it into written form, but the transcript doesn't make any sense, or it's challenging for most people to read. It's not like a good read. So I'm curious to know how you structure this, or like, because I want to get a written component to what I'm doing now. I have other pieces in place. It's working great, but I have all this content that could be repurposed in another area, but more thoughtful with the language that's used. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that, and like how you guys actually structure it.
So one, let me get with you off air at some point. There's a couple of like AI tools that help with transcription that are much better than standard transcription models. And then we kind of had some cool processes where we can run it through. And if you have a good outline, you can get way closer to the end goal with very little effort and then to go through. So I'll definitely have some tools to help out with that. For me specifically, I operate a little differently because I actually don't particularly care about my audience. I just want the information out there. So I'm usually pivoting and moving to where other people aren't. So, you know, when the admin, again, as we talked about, I've just kind of moved roles. So even the spaces have gotten better and lots of people are hosting them. So I'm probably going to move off from the liquid lunch. So I usually just move formats to wherever I just think it's going to be helpful. So I just move around. So like the podcast, you know, we did the first one with Jack. I have the one that's I'm about to actually drop the episode on there with Jeff Kardakis from Trust Swap. It's really good. Little hint, the next one's with Gene Hoffman. He's an absolute OG in the space and one of the
whoa, rewind.
Yeah.
You're doing one with Gene?
Did one with Gene. It's actually we'll get it edited. We'll be dropping soon.
Gene's my favorite person in the space. He's one guy I'm really excited to get an interview opportunity with. I've talked to him in spaces a lot. What he brings to the community, in my opinion, and to the crypto community, was his willingness to talk about all these specific things with an audience of people, talk to his Chia guys, but he talks about everything. He really just lays his whole life experience out there for you, right on a silver platter. I just wanted to do shout out to Gene.
Yeah, he's
the CEO.
He's a superhero, man.
Of Chia.
Yep.
Okay.
He's on the original like cypherpunk list. So like he is a card carrying OG. Very, very savvy guy. Yeah, I was really excited to talk to him as well. So for me, it's always just like trying to find places that are protectful for me. And so I kind of have some like odd hopes. Or some like odd personality type. So I'm helpful on the front, but I'm very unorganized. So I'm very conscientious, but not orderly. So for me, a lot of the things I do, it's about trying to find ways to have the team basically support me. So they do a great job of like, hey, let me grab a teaser from this. You know, like when we go through and do a lot of our written content, we'll usually start with, hey, here's an idea, something we want to jump through. And then I'll be like, okay, great. Here's kind of an angle. Here's this, here's that. Like, here's some specifics to dig into. They'll get the article going and then bring it back to me for like a final rendition. And so I try to basically, we try to leverage between, okay, we've got good writers, and then I've got, a good point of view and a lot of input on these things. Go ahead.
So just so on the writing person, because I'm curious about the video. So I have somebody doing video, but that's more so for my business, but I know it's helping me too, because I'm, brand basically at this point. With the written word, stuff. So are you getting somebody through the community? Just hypothetically, you find somebody in the community who's willing to write or knowledgeable about the topic, right? And then are you presenting them the idea with a framework or an outline of some sort, and then putting that together, and then they might run it through one or two different AIs, and then giving it back to you, or does it go to the editor and then to you? How are you?
So you can pull up, if you go to research there, you can pull up a bunch of the blog posts we've been doing and posting. So there's some magic to a few of these things about helping get these things to like rank and do cool stuff. But for the most part, it's there's something we want to talk about. So like the first one there is Aragon. So it's one of those that there's not, because Aragon is a very like heavy client, like people getting early in crypto aren't like, hey, I wonder what Aragon does. Like it's really difficult, right? But so there's the only stuff on Aragon for the most part is Aragon for DevOps and guys like Gamma, right? So because that stuff's really hard and there wasn't really content on it, we're like, all right, well, since we keep talking about Aragon, let's put that out. So like there's a simple one on Aragon. So we
what is Aragon and how does it work in plain English?
Yep.
And for guys like me, I mean, I can read those posts all day long, but I need something that's digestible.
Exactly. And so that one there, this is just like, man, we're talking about this word, like, what is it? So, that was a concept we wanted to put out. And then right there at the bottom, you'll see there's a quote from Gamma. So that's a cool way to be able to shout him out as well. So
Aragon is very useful as archive full node client or RPC endpoint client. It's an archive full node by default and stores 80% less data than Go Ethereum. Geth. Archive full node Aragon takes up to a month to fully sync. So for most users, they will not run Aragon, but Go Ethereum instead. Wow, that is awesome. Shout out to Gamma, by the way. Gamma's my man. I love
Gamma's awesome. Very smart man. So say with that article, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still when we spoke a couple months ago, you were kind of like leading the charge on that from like it appeared from the conversation we had. So are you coming up with an idea on something and then giving that to somebody else to have them expound upon that? Or how are you doing that?
Yeah. So we'll have writers that'll get like the majority of that content out there. And then again, depending on some of these things, if it's, stablecoin, right? Well, I'll read through and be like, hey, I don't really like this perspective, or where you pulled that from. This is something I disagree with, or like, let's get a quote from here. Then you can look at, say, like that one there's about Aragon, right? So, well, hey, like, I mean, Gamma's in the community and he's a legend. Like, let's get Gamma's take on it. So then you put Gamma in there as well. So you can like lean on different people in the community, right? So if you happen to be writing something about stable coins and you had a section in there, you're like, man, I'm not sure. You literally just send it to me, right? Like we lean on people in the community. So we have different people that can contribute on that. So you can start with the framework, and there's all kinds of different services in the middle to get that. All right, hey, I'm right here with this idea. Give me 80, 90% of it, and then I can then finalize it. There's a lot of ways to get that 80, 90% in the middle, depending on, again, what the end goal is.
Interesting. I want to.
Sam's like, lean on others. I don't understand. Not computing. No, but Sam, it's a very community atmosphere. People come to me with stuff all the time. I come to people's stuff with all the time where I can help. Oh, you want me to retweet this? Oh, I'll help you co-host a Twitter space. And then there's guys that are way more technical that help me on my cell phone, literally sit here in the morning talking to them. I'm like, I don't understand this shit. Can you please help me? And they're like, yes, it's normal. I don't understand shit. So, and I kind of bring that more. I've been one of the things that I show Sam, he shows me a lot of detailed stuff, but I show him like community building, being a part of a team, having fun with friends, because that's just, everyone's good at different shit, right? Like I'm good at like hanging around the bros and like catching a nice little like friendship vibe with everyone and like moving together. But I know you got to go, Walrus. Is there anything you want to say before we go? I dropped your link below, liquidloans.io, guys. Walrus with 2 L's. I'm going to pop it up here. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. And you have anything coming up for us?
So I'll be dropping more of the podcast episodes. Everyone likes the walks and talks, so I'll probably do those a little more often. Part of it is the walk and talks. The other reason I like those better is when I'm ever on camera like this, I can just I can't do the influencer Instagram thing and just follow around with the lights. I'm terrible at it. So I do a terrible job recording in here by myself. When I'm talking to people, I'm great. Otherwise, I'm just like, not yelling at this rectangle for no reason. It's dumb. So the walk and talks are way easier for me. They feel more organic because I'm always walking and talking with people on Spaces. So I'll probably start doing some more content like that, where again, it's more just, hey, just tell me what's going on. Like if you're walking around next to me, you'd get a better feel for it. And that's easier for me than the newsreader style stuff. So I'll probably be doing more of that. The podcast side. There's a few cool events coming up. I'm going to be doing, I'll be speaking at the Breathe convention and the Las Vegas Convention Center in May. It's a big Web3 event. I'm going to speak there. There's Consensus that's going to be down here in Austin. So I'm going to be, I won't be speaking at the event, but I'm going to be working at a few of the events on the outside, talking with people. There's a handful of people that I spoke with at ETH Denver. Some of them came down for South by Southwest as well. So trying to get the noise outside of the community. And that's just the place that I feel like I could be valuable right now. We've got a lot of people stepping up, doing cool stuff. So as I always say, like, I just keep pivoting away from what everybody else is doing, trying to pick up something else new. And then when someone comes in who loves doing what I'm doing, does it better, then great. Then I'll just move on. So right now it's Spaces, everyone's crushing it. So I'm doing the podcast. When there's 2 or 3 podcasts and they're crushing it, I'll just go on to do something else. So I'll just keep moving around as everybody keeps stepping up, doing awesome stuff. I'll go do something else.
And I get what Sam's doing now. He's trying to figure out his stuff on his end, because I look at these websites too, and the certain writings and how time consuming some things are. And that people are helping and people are paying others to do stuff. And it is really important as you grow your brand I need to get better and more specific. I can't just hammer away everything myself, because there's tools and people to use. But Walrus, thank you so much for everything you do. I'm so excited for the next 3 years of this community. I don't care if I ever speak a word again. Like it's amazing watching all this unfold. It's been a long fight. The people that are still here, Hex is the greatest community in crypto by far. It shows to be true, as far as I can see, at least. So thank you so much for coming on, dude. And I cannot wait for your future success. I cannot wait for the future of Liquid Loans. I cannot wait for Pulse Chain to drop and everyone to be work mode 100% for like years on end. It's going to be insane. And I hope you have an amazing day, dude.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it so much. Sam, I appreciate all the good questions, man. I love that good stuff. And then, yeah, holler at me off air, man. We'll see if we can help with any logistics, getting all that content out, man. You're a smart guy. Everything I've seen of yours is awesome. So I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you for the conversation. I appreciated that, the dialogue. I enjoyed it. So,
and Walrus, I'm going to drop you off for 1 second. And Sam, I just want you to stay here for 1 second, so I can show you and reiterate to the crowd.
We should let Walrus go, PSA go off the air.
You go. Just 1 second. I just want to show everybody tomorrow evening how to get cheap T-shares with Crypto Sloth. Do you like T-shares? Do you like to get them at a 67% discount through the HSI staking situation? Guys, I mean, the HSI auctions, that is something that I haven't dove into so much, to be honest. Yes, I understand it. Yes, I can look at it, but I have not really pressed auction yet or done a bid, because I always assume that I'm not going to get it. But other people are like, I've been getting it. And then we're following it up the next day. So we just did 2 episodes on stablecoins. We're doing 2 episodes on Hedron, ICOSA, HSI auctions with cryptographics. I cannot wait to see cryptographics. It's been a while, guys. Make sure you follow Sam on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And follow me on the same things, guys. We're coming back to you tomorrow and Sunday. So Saturday, Sunday mix up. No, we're not doing church. We're doing Hedron ICOSA, okay, which is similar, pretty much similar. All right, so have an amazing day, guys. Peace out, Sam. I'll see you soon. Hit the biceps, hit the likes. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Guys, I'm changing up the times. I'm fiddling with some things. Just give me a time. I needed to take a break from doing it every day to get back. Obviously, you guys can see I'm looking great. Skin's glowing. I know it. Have an amazing day, guys. I'll see you soon.